All right, this is my final project for literature and arts. I'm going to take a look at two pieces of art from all three eras that we've looked at in this course from the semester. So, without any further ado, let's get into it. Beginning with the first piece of art, we're going to take a look at the Great Sphinx of Egypt. So, guarding the pyramid of Khafre lies a colossal figure, the largest ever sculpted by the Egyptians, the Great Sphinx. This monument was likely erected sometime during the reign of Khafre, between 2575 BC and 2465 BC. As its name suggests, it's a giant sphinx, a creature with the head of a man and the body of a lion. These hybrids were commonly depicted in Egypt throughout history, symbolizing royalty and power, but the Great Sphinx is the most well-known of all of them. Excuse me. Over thousands of years, the Great Sphinx was gradually buried under the sand. Only its head stuck out. It wasn't until the 1800s that excavators began to uncover the rest of its body. And what they discovered was more massive than they could have ever imagined. The Colossus measured in at a staggering 238 feet in length and 65 feet in height. It had an unprecedented size and proportion for its time. The Sphinx itself is made from limestone, and as such, the elements have slowly eroded it away over time. Cracks have formed, and details have crumbled apart, and even entire portions have fallen off. The most notable of these damages are its missing nose and beard, which no longer cling to its head. Despite its dilapidated condition, however, the structure still remains a beautiful work of art. Impressive details, like the carved eyes and mouth, are still intact and clearly demonstrate the fine craftsmanship of the sculptors. Also noteworthy is the fact that the Sphinx was painted at one point, as we've found traces of red paint on its surface. Not much is known about its original purpose or use, however. Records describing its original function are few and far between, but it is theorized that it was meant to guard the Temple of Khafre and the Pyramid of Khafre. Whatever the reason, it's a reminder of Egypt's obsession with grand monuments, which correspond to their afterlife beliefs. Egyptians believed in an afterlife and went to great lengths to achieve powerful and protected statuses within it. All right, we're going to move on to the second piece of art here, and this is the Maison-Curée Temple of Nimes. So, built in modern-day Nimes, France, the Maison-Curée Temple is among the best preserved examples of Roman architecture still standing. While other Roman temples were often damaged or dismantled over time, the Maison-Curée Temple remained relatively untouched. This is due in part to its continued use and maintenance throughout the ages. Following its original purpose as a temple in 2 AD, it transitioned to being a town hall, and then a Christian church, and then a private residence, and even a stable for government horses. But today, it serves primarily as a tourist attraction. The temple was erected upon a previous structure's foundation, the identity of which is sadly lost to time. Its base measures in at 26.42 meters by 13.54 meters, and its podium reaches a height of 2.85 meters. The column order is Roman Corinthian, with 6 columns in the front and 11 on each side. It was constructed using a square measurement system of 2.8 Roman feet, which was notably unique for its time and location. On top of the arch, there are spaces for letters, which were likely removed during one of the temple's transitions. Archaeologists and historians hypothesize the text would have read the following: To Gaius Caesar, son of Augustus, consul, to Lucius Caesar, son of Augustus, consul designate to the princes of youth. So, because of its remarkable preservation and exquisite design, the Mason-Kure Temple has achieved great fame, existing as one of Provence's most famous ancient structures. It is often attested as a prime example of Augustine and Vitruvian ethos, with notable similarities to the Temple of Mars, as well as the Temple of Rome and Augustus at Pola. It demonstrates the economic and artistic prowess of Rome. No destitute or uninspired people could construct such a temple. It also serves as a reminder of their worship of the Roman gods. They believed the gods could be honored by, and even contained within, these temples. In return, they believed divine blessings would be granted to them. And now we'll move on to the third piece of art. This is going to be a song called the Kyrie Eleison. So during the 1100s, Hildegard of Bingen, or Bingen, not sure how you pronounce that, was a leading composer of plain song for the church. She was among the most influential women of her time, actually. In addition to songwriting, she also wrote poetry and plays. She studied science and theology, and she even dabbled in a little bit of medicine. She was intelligent, she was prolific, and she made a profound impact on the Western world as a whole with her works. But it's her music which probably made the biggest impact, as that's what she's most remembered for today. Hildegard's music came from a rather unique source of inspiration, her visions. Since the age of 5, she recalled seeing visions of cosmic forces and allegorical figures which related to her faith. It was these visions which prompted and guided her writing. And indeed, she did much writing over the course of her career. She wrote around 77 distinct songs for the church, which ranged in genre from antiphons to responsories to hymns. One of her most famous songs, however, was her last, and that was the Kyrie Eleison. Now, this piece stands out from her other works for a few reasons. First, the words didn't actually originate with her, but with the liturgy from the Mass. It's a simple line which repeats the phrase, "Lord, have mercy on us." And secondly, the melody for this song actually came from one of her earlier works, O Lucidissima. The melody has a wide range of notes and was meant for female singers to perform during a service. Plain songs such as this one show how integrated music had become with the church services of medieval times. It helped to connect the souls of the individuals with God in a spirit of reverence and worship. It gave the service a beautiful and almost ethereal quality to it, and it purposely featured lots of repetition to foster a spirit of meditation on the words. Hildegard's compositions inspired many church composers after her, and they laid the groundwork for what religious music would evolve into years later. And that brings us to the fourth piece of art we're going to take a look at here. And this one comes from China. It's called Wintry Trees. So painted by the Chinese artist Wen Zhengming, Wintry Trees depicts a snowy scene, complete with bare trees, rocks, and a flowing stream. Excuse me. It's a hanging scroll painted with ink. The scroll itself is 90.5 centimeters by 31 centimeters. The occasion of this work is also noteworthy, as it was done shortly after his wife died. And afterwards, a man by the name of Li Ziqing gave him a gift during this time of grief. And so in return, Wen Zhengmin gave him this painting as a way of saying thank you. He signed the work and even noted his age at the time of completing it, which was 73. So idyllic nature paintings such as this one were common in China at that time. Artists would often paint them out of their own head, instead of going to a real location. This method of painting was called wo yu, and it meant wandering while lying down. Now, while wintry trees fits well into this category of art, it also lacks one notable feature, and that's people. Why exactly no humans are present in this work is a mystery, but perhaps it was symbolic of Wen Xingming's loneliness after the passing of his wife. The painting utilizes verticality, not only in its long scroll length, but also in its subject matter, the trees. The trees reach all the way up into the sky, with the one in the middle rising especially high. There is also a notable lack of shadows, which gives the impression of a low-light winter setting. Finally, if one peers off into the distance, he or she can find even more trees and rocks far away, which gives the work a real sense of depth. The brushstrokes used to convey all these ideas are expertly done, and the lines are also quite thin, conveying almost a sharpness to the piece. Chinese landscapes like these demonstrated a great appreciation of nature in Asian culture. In fact, the Chinese word for landscape comprises two characters, which mean mountains and water. This is often connected with Taoism, a philosophy that focuses on peace and harmony with nature. Peaceful scenes, as presented in wintry trees, show off this philosophy quite well. And that brings us to the fifth piece we'll look at here, and this is the Dome of the Cathedral of Florence. Now, the Cathedral of Florence is a monumental work of art unto itself, but for this video, I would just focus on its dome here, as that's undoubtedly the most impressive thing about it. Designed by the genius Italian architect Filippo Brunelleschi, this dome was an unprecedented feat of architecture when it was completed in 1436. It innovated new building techniques and defied the laws of physics known at the time. The result was a beautiful and baffling red dome to cover the cathedral, one that still stands today. The dome itself is octagonal in shape and is made of bricks and stones. There are two layers to it, an inner layer and an outer layer. The outer layer has a massive diameter of 54.50 meters. And incredibly, neither of these layers were made with wooden supports, as most domes would have been thought to require. Instead, Brunelleschi employed some smart tactics to get around this issue. First, he made the dome hollow in between the layers, making it lighter. Secondly, he utilized a self-supporting skeleton as it was built up. And third, he girdled it with the whole dome. He girdled the whole dome with metal, holding it in place. Another thing he utilized was a type of zigzagging bricklaying technique, which was new for its time. Brunelleschi's dome was a prime example of Renaissance art and innovation. The Renaissance sought to progress every discipline of human effort to new levels. And this dome did just that. It was built at a scale never seen before. It was built with techniques never used before. And it utilized new technologies never imagined before. On one hand, it was built to honor God and His church, but on the other hand, it was also built to show how far humans could take their skill in fields like architecture. And finally, the last piece of art we're going to look at here is the School of Athens. The School of Athens was painted by one of the greatest artists of the Renaissance, Raphael. It was completed in 1511 and exists as one of the 4 frescoes he painted in the Apostolic Palace of the Vatican. The 4 frescoes symbolize 4 categories of knowledge: philosophy, theology, poetry, and justice. This one symbolizes philosophy. It presents a wide range of figures from ancient times, ranging from philosophers to mathematicians. The 2 most prominent characters stand in the middle. On the left is Plato, and on the right is Aristotle. These were considered to be some of the greatest thinkers from antiquity. Plato's philosophy emphasized ideals and divine principles, which is why he's depicted pointing up toward God. Meanwhile, Aristotle emphasized more natural aspects of reality, physical things that could be observed, and so thus he's depicted with his hand flat toward the ground. There is even more symbolism present here in this painting, more than I have time to say here. So instead, I'll briefly mention some of the artistic features of it. The painting itself was done on plaster, and it makes exceptional use of color, lighting, and perspective. The hall that the two philosophers stand in feels three-dimensional, as though one could reach his or her hand back into it. This piece demonstrates the renewed interest Renaissance influencers had in Greek and Roman figures. Not only does it feature Greek philosophers and mathematicians, it also features architecture that closely resembles buildings of that period as well. Renaissance influencers believed great knowledge and progress could be attained through studying the great masters of antiquity, and that's exactly what we see here in the School of Athens. And with that, I want to conclude with just some final personal reflections. So, beginning with the ancient era, I was impressed by just how advanced and intelligent the people from these times were. Sometimes, as modern Westerners, we can view people from the past as simple and uneducated. We can view them as inferior to us. And after all, they didn't have the technology or innovations we have today, so they must have been dumber than us. But I've come to find that that could not be further from the truth. The ancient Mesopotamians, the Greeks, the Egyptians, the Romans, these were all highly advanced people in their own right, and their artistic accomplishments prove it. Unintelligent people could not have designed and sculpted the Sphinx, for example. Unintelligent people could not have constructed impressive structures like the Mason-Curé of Nimes Temple. Their artistic accomplishments clearly show that they were intelligent, they were skilled, and they knew what they were doing. Moving on to the medieval period, this stands out to me for what its art glorified, especially across different cultures. In Europe, the art typically glorified God and depicted many Christian scenes. Even the music reflected this, as much of it was Gregorian chants and plainsong, composed for churches. But over in Asia, this was not so. The landscape paintings and poems we analyzed typically glorified nature instead. They featured trees and mountains and rivers as their main subjects, not usually God or the divine. And then finally, I'll speak about the Renaissance here. The Renaissance strikes me for its rapid pace of progress. New and impressive buildings were being erected at an unprecedented rate, for example. And these buildings, most of them churches and cathedrals, stood far above any structures that came before, literally. They were intricately decorated by artists like Raphael, and they were expertly designed by architectural geniuses like Filippo Brunelleschi. All of these innovations and all of this progress came so quickly, and it makes sense as progress and innovation were central focuses of the Renaissance. At the same time, however, we also see that looking back to antiquity was also a focus, as the Renaissance had a renewed interest in classical Greek and Roman works. It's intriguing to think that looking back on the past actually helped the Renaissance to move forward. Perhaps we could learn a thing or two from that. Learning from history is essential to progress into a brighter future. And with that, I will end my presentation here. Thank you so much for watching, and have an awesome day.